Before I get started, I wanted to just say a couple things. So this video might be a little bit longer. I hope to not make them as long, but this one's gonna be a little bit longer. I know I'm headless. All you see is the keyboard and my hands. That's kind of the point though. So what I want to say really briefly is, as some people know, I have been retraining for a while now, and maybe some other pianists out there have felt similarly in their retraining process, but I've been shy about posting videos and sharing, audio clips, mostly because I did feel some embarrassment about having to restart and having to rework my technique. I think that a lot of people assume that musicians just don't experience pain or whatever, but it got to the point where I just felt like I needed to retrain. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be able to continue playing because my stress, injuries in my wrist were so bad. I just hope if there's pianists out there who are considering retraining or who are in the process of retraining, that you realize there's no shame in it. There's no need to be embarrassed, because you are actually doing yourself a huge service and your students a huge service, because you are attempting to better yourself as a musician and to be a stronger player than you were and to be more confident. And I think anyone who's undertaking this process deserves a huge round of applause. It is not easy, and this has been definitely one of the most challenging things I've ever committed to in my life, as far as just doing it and doing it properly and making sure that everything I'm doing is moving forward. Okay, end of spiel. Moving on. One more thing. The reason why I wanted to just make another one of these videos and briefly, for a couple minutes, say something. I had a friend tell me that she found a video I posted a while ago to be helpful, and that was encouraging to me to continue making these videos that are about the technique I'm learning and ways to use arm weight and fling from the knuckles in a healthy way to avoid pain and injury. Okay, let's get started. I am working on some more difficult pieces right now with my coach, and we just decided that it's a good idea to, yes, work on difficult things, but to also work on things that are a little bit easier to feel a sense of success. And I told her I had only learned a couple Mendelssohn songs without words, and that I was interested in learning, oh, don't do this, it's still, I just do that out of bad habit, that I wanted to learn some more Mendelssohn because I'm just very curious. So she assigned me the first Prelude and Fugue, because I told her one of the things I love learning and working on are preludes and fugues. My brain just loves a good puzzle. Okay, so I'm working on the first one, and I want to make sure I have a pencil. I'm gonna first hold up the score so that as I'm working on it, maybe if you have the music or what have you, you can kind of, let me angle this a little better, follow along in your own score, and I'll be pointing things out. Okay, so here's what it looks like. And it's just arpeggiated broken chords. So nothing too challenging. We're just kind of looking at some double rotations. We're looking at single notes. Fingering is going to be relatively straightforward. There's just a few technical things that are going to be a little bit on the trickier side. Oops. And depending on how long it takes me to kind of go through the initial process, I might make a part 2 of this. But this is a really good piece to kind of, you know, when you're sort of a little bit more congealed with the technique, with arm weight, this is a good piece to get into as you're starting to really solidify what you're working on. Okay. All right, let's go. These are just, like I said, broken chords. The first important thing, because there are skips and leaps, unlike just note-to-note playing where we don't have to worry about the fingers spreading apart like this unnaturally, we have to make sure that when we're, you know, going from thumb and we're going into our 2, that's a leap away, that we don't want to unnaturally stretch the fingers. We just want the arm to move the hand horizontally. All right, so the first note, first of all, I'm going to set myself up where my left leg is in front of my torso and my right leg's a little bit underneath, so that I'm just sort of sitting on my left hip. And my elbow, my right arm elbow, is going to be kind of tucked into my right hip over here, just slightly. Okay, so a little bit of a rotation into thumb with like a forward motion from the elbow. And now to get to that 2, sorry, my face is itchy. To get to that 2, I'm just going to let my arm travel sideways, horizontally, and just make sure that I'm going forward with a nice fling from the knuckle. And now I'm just going to keep, my arm's just going to keep traveling laterally until I get to my 3. And as you can see, that just kind of, the arm moves basically like a millisecond before the finger is going to move over. And then that 5 is just going to have a little, you know, we just treat it like any other finger. So we have a little rotation to thumb with a forward shove, and then we're just going to move the arm laterally until we get to where we need to be. Now, one trick that I really like that my coach introduced me to, she calls it graduating. And basically, the normal interval from thumb to do is just a second. So we're going to start with, you know, feeling the second and feel comfortable. And I'm starting over because I'm only working on going this way. The music's not going, it's just going thumb to 2. So I don't need to worry about restarting the graduating. Okay, now I want to make sure when I do a third that they feel the same from a second to a third. So I'm just making sure that my thumb is popping over. And now I'm just going to go for my 4th. And I'm just making sure my thumb's always moving with my finger 2. Now if I was going to do this in my left hand, here's my thumb, just a nice rotation into it. And then I'm just traveling on over. Just traveling on over. And see how my thumb likes to be right next to my 2. So I'm going to now do the graduating trick. And I'm going to go to that 3rd. And my arm is just always moving about like a millisecond before my finger makes contact with the keys. So that's that is just using fling and making sure that we have a single rotation towards and then away. And then now we kind of have to do a double rotation to get to 3, which is basically having to rotate to 3, then rotate back towards yourself, and then rotating into 5. So double rotation just means that you're going forward, then you go back to go forward again, as pretty much like what it is. Okay, so now left hand, we're just gonna, 5 to 3, now we already have, that natural interval is a third, so we don't really have to worry about graduating. From this 3 to the 2, really like getting on that corner of the nail, and you're going forward and down. So now I've just, just got to get my arm over to that fourth. No big deal. If the second and the fourth feel the same, then you're golden. That's basically the rule. If you're working on graduating and the larger abnormal intervals feel like the normal intervals, you're golden. Okay, now, as we're starting to kind of put this together, there's a synergy between the right and the left hand. And part of this retraining, for me at least, has been learning how to have the hands communicate with each other. I realized that earlier in my playing, I was just so nervous that I never really focused on making sure my hands were communicating with each other. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the left hand, and then we're going to add on one note in the right hand. Why are we doing this? Because there's a thumb to a thumb pass off. And in order to kind of have just a beautiful melodic line, we want to make sure it just sounds like one hand is playing. Because we basically just have one voice, and then our secondary voice, our melody, does get introduced in that second measure. So we just want to make sure that with this first voice, all these notes sound like they're being played by one hand. So we're just going to practice that thumb to thumb pass off. To give this phrase a little bit of shaping is we can put in a rainbow in the left hand, which is just like a little semicircle from the elbow. And I know my wrist is kind of moving along. There's obviously a relationship between the elbow and the hand, but we can just put in a nice little rainbow, and it's just going to give it a nice, just sort of like an arch, a nice beautiful arch. And now, what am I going to do? I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to play those four notes in my right hand, and then I'm going to feel the pass off from my right hand finger 5 to my left hand finger 5. So, first of all, I'm going to set my left hand up in the second position that it's going to be in. Keep doing that, I just really want to feel that there's a glue and a connection between my hands so that, like I said earlier, this just sounds like one long line being played by one hand. Okay. And I did just start working on this, so I'm talking about these things as I'm working on them. Now, I'm going to jump down. Oh, let me talk about fingering briefly. Okay, so here's the music. I'm just going to kind of put this right up here. Now, when we're fingering these broken chords, arpeggiated areas, we're going to finger them based on the inside intervals. Now, this isn't a hard and fast rule. Obviously, there's always exceptions. But for this, let's just look at this first measure here. And it's pretty straightforward. So what I mean is, let's take a look over. This is backwards in my camera, so I'm kind of looking at the music and looking at the camera. So in this first left-hand chord right here, arpeggiated chord, we have a third between the inner notes. So we're going to put a 5, 3, 2, 1. Now let me find in the left hand, I think our second, sorry, this is a little, I feel like I'm reading backwards right now. You know what, let me just take a quick look. I'm not good at reading upside down, I have to say. let's see, oops. Okay, I apologize. Okay, I'm back on track. Okay, right here, there's a fourth in the left hand between these two inner notes. So we're going to put 5, 4, 2, 1 because we want to account for that fourth, and between 4 and 2, the natural interval is a third, but that's going to be a little bit easier than doing a 3 to 2 since the natural interval between those two fingers is a second, so mostly for the most part, the largest interval we really are comfortable going between 3 and 2 is a third. At least, I mean, my hands are a little, not small, but not very big. So we're going to put a 4 and a 2 there since we have that inner interval of a fourth. Okay, just wanted to briefly talk about fingering. All right, now, when our melody comes in, you know, it's really beautiful, but I'm looking over in the second measure. So right there might be maybe a little more difficult as a pianist is first sort of recovering and is first trying to learn about this fling and the pinky. So the first thing I would like to demonstrate is that we really are just within an octave, you know? So here's our octave. Now, if the octave is just, you're coming forward and you're coming down, and you're just letting the keyboard open up your palm. Like, I like to think of it as either a bear paw or like pancake batter, just sort of pancake batter, just sort of splaying out over the keys. Those are my two analogies, metaphors. Those are my two visuals that help me and help my students, I've noticed. And also you're going to feel movement back here, and you're going to feel movement in your caboose, your upper arm, to kind of really get that octave down. So all we're thinking about is that we're just letting the arm kind of splay that pinky open, and we're still just going forward and down with a little fling from the knuckle. But again, just remind yourself, movement on the piano, it's a lateral activity, not an up and down. So there's no need to really go up like this and then back down. Ooh, that didn't feel good. We just need to kind of go over. Okay, now we can also use graduating for this. We could do a smaller interval. We could start just with that. The other thing, you can always weight the top of your nail like this. And, you know, you might be thinking, well, how does that help? Because I'm literally just pressing down my own finger. What it does is it's training your neuromuscular connection, like from your brain to your arm. It's starting to send signals that the movement's going to come from this upper knuckle. I mean, not like over flinging, but that's kind of where we're getting our activity. So it's going to start training your muscles and your, you know, brain connections. I'm super scientific. To use this knuckle. Now the other thing this is going to do, you're going to start to eventually feel that you naturally want to have a little bit of a turn in here. Like even just doing this, I'm already feeling a sense, well, and also just because I'm retrained at this point for things like this, I do feel that inner turn. So there's a couple different purposes for weighting the finger. First of all, you're just trying to get a sense for what it will feel like. You're simulating the weight from the arm. You're training your brain to use this fling and this knuckle, and you're also training yourself to go forward. So now we're just going to keep graduating this. We're just going to keep graduating it. And it's not that I have, you know, there's kind of, I've been working with my coach, a misconception that there needs to be finger independency. And it's not, finger independency to me is the wrong term, because what you're doing is you're training yourself to use arm weight to go into each finger, but you're not actively spreading apart like this. You're not pressing with the fingers. So yes, you are learning how to play each finger separately from the others, but they all work together. So if I was just going to isolate the fling in my 5 from the fling in my 4, like, all these fingers work together. They all go down when they all go down. So use that to your advantage. Use it to your advantage, because when you use that to your advantage, you're avoiding any tension in the wrist by pressing. You know, this is advantageous. All the fingers are going to be working together in this regard. Also, I am still, you know, that 4's got to kind of move over with that 5. Because, again, these fingers work together. One cannot go down without the other. It's physically impossible. And if you do try to train that into yourself, into your playing, you'll probably have, you know, a good amount of pain in here and in here. Now also the elbow's got to adjust slightly. Since this is lateral motion, the elbow has to go over with the fingers. Or, I mean, not with the fingers. The elbow goes over and the fingers go with. The elbow moves the forearm over so that the fingers have a chance to get over there. Okay. Now, that is kind of the majority of any technical trouble that you'll come across. Okay. Well, I'll make maybe another video regarding some of these chords found in the fugue, and we'll go from there. But if you watch this video, I hope you find some of it helpful, and I will make another one here in a minute.